I first heard about The Ghost or An Taibhse when it was hitting the festival rounds and premiered at Pigeon Shrine FrightFest. Now, this is the first horror film to be shot entirely in Irish, which may or may not seem like a huge deal, but the language was on the verge of extinction, so to have movies and other media now highlighting it, Irish is making a resurgence with the people. But aside from the sociological impact, does this quiet horror deliver the chills? Amid the barren landscape of post-famine Ireland, a father and daughter struggle to survive the brutal winter as caretakers of a remote mansion, only to be driven to the edge of sanity by the horrors lurking within. So this takes place in an isolated location, where a father and daughter, Eamon and Maura, are commissioned to care for this sprawling mansion estate through the winter. Now, the daily chores that keeps them extremely busy, hopefully keeping them from stumbling into trouble that could prove very bad for their health. There are definite feels of Kubrick's The Shining almost from the beginning, and maybe even a few intentional nods as well. But this movie creates its own darkness to the story, where it takes on a whole different form of terror. And so while it may resemble The Shining in a few ways, this is uniquely its own. Now, the setting is full of foreboding and sinister vibes. In many establishing scenes, we're shown the house is massive and filled with dark and decrepit areas. And even in the clean spots of the mansion, the space is daunting, creating this huge sense of loneliness with only Maura and Eamon to stay there. Now, creatively, a monotony to their existence is established that accentuates the isolation, which in turn builds up the anxiety. And we get the sense that there is a bad omen hanging over the residents, even when nothing untoward has occurred for us to feel that way. The presentation sets up a genuinely creepy vibe where you can just feel something dreadful inching its way closer. And to help in that area, there is a wonderful atmosphere that's created by a mixture of natural sounds, score, and vocalizations, which makes it eerie, ominous, and unnerving. The director, John Farley, enhances the menacing aesthetic by using some camera decisions that are meant to get under our skin. A couple of times the film features some lockdown shots that are just wildly unsettling. One takes place in Moira's room, and it is slow and aggravating, and it made my skin crawl. The patience to leave the camera unmoving for minutes while the character just moves back and forth in the room, it is a perfect setup for creating apprehension and terror. And that's before we get a payoff. And what I love is that while we typically are rewarded by some visual that's just completely wrong, that's not always a given, building out the agonizing suspense in effective ways. And multiple scenes had me straining to see if there was something lurking in the dark or maybe in the corner of a room. I mean, much like in Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man, my eyes began to play tricks on me thanks to the intense focus that the scene created just through the dim lighting or the creatively placed set pieces. And there's a fever dream aspect to a portion of the story, and it is unsettling, even seizure-inducing. We watch some madness ensue, and it is like this hallucinogenic, rage-filled drug trip in the middle of a rave. And if you're watching this in the dark, which I do definitely recommend doing, when you get to this moment, just beware that it could cause some tremors. There's this barrage of lighting effects that twist and distort what we see, drawing us even deeper into the madness that we're watching. And with other lighting effects, the interior settings are lit with warmly flickering light, typically only illuminating areas directly in front of a character. And this creates the space for nasty things to go bump in the night, and for disturbing images to slowly come into focus. But it's not all intense scenes that keep us on the ragged edge. I mean, part of the beauty and the effectiveness of the storytelling are these quiet moments, those that show us the dreariness of their everyday existence. As each scene passes, we watch madness enclose around them, and the burden of taking care of this entire property begins to take its toll on them physically. Both actors, Livy Hill and Tom Karisk, convincingly disappear into their characters, creating personas that slowly become haunting shells of their former selves. And thanks to the imagery, and then the fact that we can't tell if what's being seen or experienced by those characters is purely out of emotional isolation or if it's actually real, there's a lot of dread built through watching them spiral down. Now, I do have some nitpicks that don't ruin the storytelling, but they were noticeable to me. The film is very crisp. I mean, it looks to be shot on digital. So while the vivid imagery is easy to see, the clean lines, they also remove a bit of the inherent horror that could be captured if the presentation had some graininess to it. I mean, some of the aesthetic feels like a 70s horror, which I think is awesome, but the pristine quality of the visuals, it comes across as very modern. Another nitpick area, which again isn't a huge deal, is that this takes place in like the late 1800s or maybe very early 1900s. They use candles for lighting. horse-drawn buggies for transport. But at times, the camera picks up light fixtures on the ceiling, or maybe light switches on the walls, and even electrical conduit that's running through a workshop. Now, because I noticed these, it broke me out of the illusion for a moment, but it doesn't detract from the actual story. And one final area that might be an issue for some is that there is a red book that is a mysterious component within the story. And I love the vagueness of a lot of it because it sets up undefined trepidation. But there comes a point when Moira reacts to the contents, and we're never privy to what it is that she sees. Now, we can infer what's written, but since it's not concretely given to us, we're only left with guesses. Now, I think the unknown aspect works in the story's favor, allowing us to imagine the horrors that her eyes take in, but I can also see how it could become a small sticking point for some. And as we get to the finale, the ending delivers an intense and traumatic gut punch, but it fits perfectly as the cap to all of the dread that had been built up throughout the story. What we're shown is both chilling and heart-wrenching. And while I think many will suspect what's going on throughout the story, the ending doesn't leave any room for doubt. It's going to leave an impression on you, and it has haunted me for a few days now. So overall, while An Taibhse or The Ghost has a few minor areas that can break you out of the world building, the storytelling negates these by creating an ominous and looming atmosphere full of cold and detached solitude, spooky imagery, and indelible characters. The combination of orchestra, otherworldly screams, and natural sounds constructs a vibe that will have hair standing on end and the paranoid desire to turn on all the lights in the house. While it's an accomplishment all to itself to be the first completely Irish language horror film, the acting, patient cinematography, foreboding visuals, and horrifying conclusion all demonstrate a competent grasp of the genre that is only complemented by its sociological impact. There's brief sex, little nudity, some profanity, and some gnarly violence. I give An Taibhse 4 out of 5 couches. So if you've never seen an Irish language film, in addition to this one, you should check out Kneecap. I mean, it's a completely different experience, but you will certainly be exposed to the beauty of the language. Okay, so what are you looking forward to seeing in the coming weeks? I would love to hear about what's on your list in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.